You've gone through the interview process, you've hired a candidate. Unfortunately, the candidate is not performing to the expected standard. Luckily for you, you had a probation clause in your contract, which means that you can dismiss the employee. However, are you allowed to simply fire the employee at the end of the probation period, or is there a process that needs to be followed in the law? That's exactly what we're going to be covering in today's video. Hi, my name is Aslam Moolla and I'm a registered attorney. Probation is perfectly legal in South Africa. However, to dismiss someone on probation, there must be a proper procedure followed. What is the purpose of probation? The purpose of probation is to check whether an employee is suitable for a position that they initially was appointed for. If they are found suitable, then that employee is offered a permanent position. In terms of the Labour Relations Act, specifically the Code of Good Practice, Schedule 8, it's important to note that if an employee who is on probation commits a form of misconduct, then that company must have a disciplinary hearing. Probation is only for poor work performance. What this means that is if you have an employee that has committed some kind of wrongdoing in the workplace, they broke a rule at work, then that employee must be subjected to a disciplinary hearing. In other words, that employee, irrespective of whether they are on probation or not, must have charges issued to them and there must be a disciplinary hearing. However, if an employee is underperforming at work and whilst they are still on probation, then that process is managed via poor work performance. Now with probation, as I've indicated earlier, a company can't just fire the person at the end of the probation period. There is a process that must be followed and certain legal requirements that need to be met in order for the dismissal to be substantively and procedurally fair. Now, what is this process that needs to be followed? Essentially, the guidelines for dismissal for poor work performance in terms of a probation are set out in the code. And the code states that any person determining whether a dismissal for poor work performance is unfair should consider the following. Number one, whether or not the employee failed to meet a performance standard. And number two, if the employee did not meet the required performance standard, whether or not the employee was aware or could reasonably be expected to have been aware of the required performance standard. The employee must also have been given a fair opportunity to meet the required performance standard. And dismissal must be the appropriate sanction for not meeting the required performance standard. Now, an employee who is placed on probation must be monitored and assessed continuously. This is from the time they started work, and you must have the above guidelines that we just spoke about in mind. A decision to end an employee's probation and not to make them permanent actually amounts to a dismissal. The employer must therefore be able to prove that the employee did not meet the performance standard. Now, how should you manage the probation period? How should you manage an employee who's under probation? Managers and supervisors must actively take part and manage employees during the probationary period. They must look at the employment contract and address performance issues immediately. Make sure that you have a written record of incidents, date, time, and the incident that took place. This can be called a probation log. Point out to the employee the areas that they are not meeting expectations, and the employee must be allowed an opportunity to state their case in the meetings that you are having with the employee. In conclusion, probation can be a valuable tool for companies. However, the correct legal process needs to be followed. If you need help in your situation, whether you are an employer or an employee, you're welcome to click on the link below and book an appointment with our office. I wish you all the best, and I'll speak to you soon.